Hello. I've recently become involved with some online fly tying groups because surprisingly enough, I find that I don't know absolutely everything about fly tying. It's really been great in a lot of ways. And I recently saw a presentation from Sherry Steele uh, regarding her hackle handle method of applying hackle to wet flies generally, steelhead flies in particular. And it got me thinking about all the different ways there are to apply hackle to a wet fly. And I'm going to show some of them here right now. This method of hackling wet flies is usually reserved for soft hackles. Flies like the partridge and orange, the one we're going to do right now. And, normally the hackle feathers are upland game birds like the partridge, snipe, and jackdaw. It's another one. You can use pheasant feathers, all kinds of feathers for this one. It's going to tie in right behind the eye. We're going to take this and we're going to strip off the fluff. This is from a Hungarian partridge. We're going to strip everything off the right side of the feather, except for the very tip. We're going to tie this in right on top of the hook with the bottom facing up. By the way, it's important to strip off the right side of the hackle. If you strip off the left side of the hackle, you're going to be SOL, because this hackle wraps backwards from a conventionally wound hackle. Twist this. This is Pearsall's Gossamer, which is traditionally used on these flies like the partridge and orange, partridge and yellow, etc. I want to get a segmented look on this. So close touching turns. And we're only going to wrap a couple of turns of this hackle. Here's one, and here's two. From here, I'm going to trap it and work the thread forward slowly. See if you can break that off. Got lucky there. Three-turn whip finish and you're done. And that is the partridge and orange, and it's, as you can see, very sparse, very sparse. And here it is all the way around. You can literally count the fibers of hackle. The fly I'm going to demonstrate the rest of the hackling with is Ray Bergman's Light Fox. I don't know that it's his fly. It's in book Trout. And it has a tag on it that's kind of interesting, or tail, I guess it's kind of interesting. It's similar to the red, a fly called the red tag, which is an old British fly. We'll put the what Bergman calls the tip on first. He's the only one that uses that terminology. Everybody else makes this a part of the tag. This flat gold tinsel. Five turns back and 5 turns then forward. Or 4, as it worked out in this case. And I'm going to tie just a piece of yarn in here. This is going to make up our tag. I'm going to double it over. Go a little more forward with this. Holding this on my side of the hook here so that thread torque won't take it. All right, now when I get back here, I'm going to cut this short. And the best way to do this is hold your scissors on the bend of the hook here. Do that. And then take some Velcro. Get this bound down a little better. Rough it up. That'll work. We're going to have a rib on this, a flat gold tinsel. I'll get that tied in here. Just a couple turns to hold that in. And then we're gonna dub some white yarn. I'm just gonna pull a couple strands off this yarn, maybe even just one, and use my fingertips to make a dubbing, like so. And I want to keep, when I make this, I want the fibers in it to stay long. Just gonna work a little better for a dubbing. I've waxed the thread with some sticky wax. I'm dubbing this fairly finely. Let's get this started. I definitely want it to taper down some in the front. So I'm really going to get fine with the dubbing here. These wool flies are never neat. And that's probably what makes them effective. When you're dubbing wool, or when you're wrapping ribbing on wool, you've got to pull it pretty hard. Otherwise, it will never be straight. Just trapping it a couple times here. The hackle on this fly is going to be yellow, and we'll do a couple versions here. The way I've always done hackle is tying in by the tip. I think this is the most traditional way to do wet flies in particular. That doesn't make it the right way or the wrong way. It just makes it the most traditional. Ray Bergman did his hackle like this. Helen Shaw did her hackle like this. Countless British tyers did their hackle like this. Mary Orvis Marbury tied in her hackle like this. Goes on and on. This is how it was mostly done. And you've seen me do this on all of my videos. I typically do about 4 turns like this. Pull this forward, bind it down, and cut it. And that would be, well, let's do it Bergman style. You could leave it like this, which was done on got lots of flies from the British Isles. Also, all the Bergman flies. Pull this down into a beard. If you left it, that's more a British style. Also Maine, they had very rough looking flies historically. But Bergman and Helen Shaw and some people Well, I take that back. Helen Shaw left her hackle wound around and didn't pull it down into a beard. Ray Bergman did. So that's what that looks like. Keep in mind that a wing would go over that. There's another way to do it, and I'll show you that next. What if all you had was a great big piece of schlappen like this? Then how could you couldn't really wind this hackle, it's too long. How would you do that? Well, one way that Carrie Stevens did on her streamers in the early 20th century was she would use bunches of hackle, just pulled off a stem like this, tied in underneath, and you can make this a little easier. I just flip the thing over. I'll put maybe 2 or 3 turns on this, kind of soft turns, pull it to length. So you get that kind of look. But that's a little sparse. What Carrie Stevens would do was she would get another bundle. Tie that in right on top of the first. She might do on her streamers, she might do 3 or 4 of these. Not the most elegant, but certainly worked for her on her streamers. A little more elegant method is Charles D. Theo's method. He would take this, he would cut a piece like so. Angle it like this and fold it over. Put a couple turns on it. Pull that down into a beard. And that's a little long. Let me back off. We'll shorten that up. Still a little long. At this point, you can cut this. And this one has one that's really long. I'll just pull it out with tweezers. And that's his method. Now you could play with the width of those slips, etc. Now Sherry Steele has come up with quite a wrinkle on that I like very much. She'll do the same thing. And just tie this much in and use the rest of it as what she calls a hackle handle. In fact, let's tie the other side in. Using this as a handle, you can manipulate this, get it just where you want it, pull it to length. Oops, I overdid that, I'm sorry. And you could flip this over, be a little easier to do. Pull that to length like so. Then you would trim this and you'd still have this side left. And you could still do the hackle handle idea. In fact, this one's a little sparse. I could cut this. Use this side. Make it a little more robust, like that. So that's Sherry Steele's method, the hackle handle method. And she uses that on a lot of steelhead flies. But you could use that everywhere. That would certainly work beautifully. I absolutely hated that body. So I've done another one. Where I went wrong is it was doubling up the yarn. It just created way too much bulk. This is a little more presentable. The next hackling method is one used by Don Bastian, where he'll take slips, fairly wide slips from each side of a piece of hackle and just pull them off like so. Put them together. Like this. And I've always thought of this as two wings almost. And a lot of times I'll just mount them like wings. I'll just turn the vise upside down. Grab them like I'm going to mount a wing. Get them tied in like that. Like so. Didn't get that. I like that hackle. Might as well put a wing on at this point. Here's a right mallard slip. Here's a left mallard feather here. Let me get my hand out of the way there. So I'm gonna put these mallard slips together. But before I mount them, I need to switch to black thread. I'll do that right now. You know, if I'm really going to do this fly Don Bastian style, I suppose I should do these wings tips apart. And I'll do that. Tips up and tips apart. Like so. It's the way Don liked to do them. He liked the action. Got quite a bit of fluff showing there. I'm going to do another whip finish. Got to get a little better coverage on that. Still not great. Oh, well. And I'll glue that up and we'll have a look. And here it is all the way around. And that is Don Bastian style hackling. Some of Don's methods come from J. Edson Leonard's book Flies, written in 1950, specifically the tips apart and this hackling style, both. I'm going to show Alice Kanba's hackling method, which is a fairly conventional method. It's just that on her flies, she winds her hackle in front of the wing rather than behind it. This fly is called a dark olive, and it has a tail of just a few strands of brown or bronze mallard. And her tails are usually pretty long, 1.5 to 2 times the length of the hook. The body on this fly is stripped hackle quill, dyed olive. You want to tie this in such a way that when you wind it, the black stripe trails. Just gives it a bit more of a segmented look. Alice flies have a real subtle taper. Barely noticeable, but it's there. And I asked her how she did that, and she said she just did it with thread. We'll get this started by hand, and then we'll clip on. Don't like that. That's better. Yeah. Right there. This is a number 12, Kamasan 175B, I believe. The next thing that goes on is the wing. And I'm cutting slips from, this is right Mallard quill, right and left slips. I want them too wide. Putting them together, and then I'm going to strip out a fiber or two. And the one slip that's too wide, look at this. It's still a little wide all the way around. And take off just a couple more fibers from both. All of Alice's flies are tips together. I think that's going to work. And now it's just a question of tying in a hackle by the tip. And we'll get it wound. Really want to stroke these back. This is Hackle that Alice sent me. She told me that she has trunks full from when they used to have a big company that supplied large sporting good companies in Germany and in New York. See if I can get one more turn. Hold the thread under tension and just do that. Now we're not going to whip finish yet. We're going to go back to the wing and now do a 3-turn whip finish forward. Those whip finish forward. See that tiny head? That head is just a 3-turn whip finish. And that is a fly in the style of Alice Conba, one of my all-time favorite tires from Ireland. And that will finish up our little excursion into different ways of doing hackle. No matter how you do it, have fun doing it.